This video is powered by the pros at Pascal Air Plumbing and Electric. Arkansas owned, Arkansas operated. GoPascal.com.
The one and only Bob Holt. What's up today, Bob? We got a big story that came yesterday. Maybe one that you might have expected after seeing Trevon Brazile helped off the court, and I know you would have been at the game. I don't know if you saw the replays of the injury, but I wasn't surprised when I saw the email come from the athletic department that Trevon be missing the season. So how do you think this impacts the team?
Well, obviously it's not good news. You feel terrible for Trevon, who worked so hard to get ready for the season, was playing so well, and probably playing his way up to being a first-round draft pick, or certainly a high draft pick. And somebody sent me some replays during the game that I was able to watch. It looked bad. It just bent in a really weird way, and he went down, and he was in a lot of pain, had to be helped off. So it didn't look good. Like you said, the news wasn't a shock, but still, you feel bad for Trevon. Obviously, feel bad for the team, but especially for him because he'd worked so hard to get and put himself in such a strong position. But it's a tough loss. He's not only a very talented player, but a really, like Eric Muslim would say, unique player. A 6'10" guy that's real wiry and obviously play inside, has tremendous, hops, and his dunks were all highlight. A lot of them were getting a lot of attention on social media, going back to, ones he had in Europe. If people got to see those videos. And but he also was a good three-point shooter. Arkansas was playing him at the small forward spot a lot. That's probably where his NBA future is, just with the way the game's going. And just a real unique player, a rim protector on defense. I don't think you replace a guy like him. Well, you really don't replace a guy like him. You try to pick up the slack probably with different players because, like I say, he's such a unique player. What he could do inside and outside is going to take more than one guy to take his minutes, I think, and be effective. We saw Devo Davis play a lot of the four the other night. And, of course, Mekhi Mitchell played 30-plus minutes. But it's probably going to take multiple guys stepping up in various games on who they're playing.
Brazil's a matchup nightmare, Bob. And when you bring that up about Devo coming in there, and I look at you look at the minutes that are being played, Brazile in the front court, he was leading the team, and so you got Mekhi. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 5 guards and 1 forward. So you look around, Bob. Who do you think out of the Mitchell twins and Kamani Johnson, or do you think it's Jalen Graham's minutes? Who do you think out of those guys is going to step up the most?
Well, it probably depends on the opponent, and then the size of that opponent. OU's got pretty good size, I think. But yeah, Jalen Graham's a guy who I think probably could pick up a lot of minutes. Certainly depending on the opponent, but he's a guy we've seen play pretty well in limited minutes. There's been games he didn't play at all when obviously, or you assume he wasn't practicing real well. And then there's been other times, Eric Muslim has talked about rewarding him for how well he's played, and how hard he's played in practice, how hard he's worked. So I think as awful as it is that Trevon Brazile's done for the season, the reality is that opens up opportunity for other guys. Injuries always do. And so I think Jalen Graham's a guy that could get extra minutes, depending on, they kind of had to do it on the fly the other night. I mean, not kind of, they had to. And that was a competitive game. I mean, they were down until late in the game. And so, Devo, missed a lot of shots, had some turnovers, but he did get 10 boards. It's pretty impressive for a 6'4" guard. He had a big rebound at the end to help kind of steal things. So, you might see Devo Davis get more minutes, Jalen Graham, Mekhi Mitchell, maybe playing more off the bench, Mekhi's twin brother. And I think he's averaging about 19 minutes, but he played 32 the other night, so he may be playing 20-plus. I think they're going to kind of have to do it by committee, but certainly Jalen Graham's the guy that comes to mind that's a pretty, good interior player, and he was an all-second-team, all-Pac-10 player, for Arizona State. So he's a talented guy. He's an older guy, a senior, and so my guess is he probably sees an opportunity here and should be pretty motivated. Not that he wasn't motivated before, but I think he'd be extra motivated now.
with all that said, too, Bob, and I agree with everything you're saying. I think there's opportunities for Graham and for Makel Mitchell, but in the second half against UNC Greensboro, they were never on the floor. Jordan Walsh didn't see the floor either. Musk stuck pretty much with the same five guys, and came from behind. I don't know if that's I don't think he takes that blueprint from the second half against Greensboro as far as the the minutes per for each player are concerned, but. That was one thing I was surprised about in that game, is that I thought with Brazile obviously not going to play that game, we didn't know he'd be out for the year, but Graham didn't get on the court. Makel Mitchell didn't get on the court. Jordan Walsh didn't play in the second half, so that just felt weird.
Yeah, Jordan Walsh is another guy. He's been starting, but I think he only played a little over 7 minutes the other night, and maybe Eric just didn't like how he was playing, didn't feel like it was his night. I think, struggling against the team you felt like Arkansas should beat pretty decisively. I think Eric felt comfortable going with kind of true and tested guys. I mean, Devo's the third-year guy in the program, the most experienced guy in the program. And personally, I thought he took some ill-advised shots, a couple perimeter shots he probably shouldn't be taking. But, he was aggressive. He was getting boards. He had some steals. I think, Makai obviously was playing well, so Eric rode him. Nick Smith played 39 minutes, third game back, 39 minutes. So he obviously wasn't on a minutes restriction. Anthony Black. So I think Eric kind of shrunk the rotation in the moment because he didn't want to, lose that game, obviously. That would have been a tough loss for Arkansas. And they were not shooting well at all. It just wasn't their night shooting-wise. They got to the line. That was ultimately what won the game for them. They hit, I'm trying to remember what it was, 20-something. I think they took 34 free throws. They hit 26 or something like that to 7 of 11. I'm sure Greensboro didn't like that discrepancy, but Arkansas was attacking and getting fouled and ultimately pulled it out. But, yeah, I think, now given a few days to prepare for OU, Eric will probably have a different game plan, for this game, obviously, against a bigger, stronger team in OU. And then they're going to have a week before they play down there in North Little Rock against Bradley, and so that'll be more time to sort of tinker with things. But I feel like Arkansas's got a really talented team. It's a huge loss. Like I say, you feel worst of all for Trevon, but Arkansas still got a lot of really good players, and I think they can still have a very strong season, being an strong NCAA tournament team. But and they do have some time to figure things out before SEC play starts. But I think there's going to be a lot of different moving parts to this probably as the season goes on.
Well, you mentioned some of the stuff that Devo did in that game. I continue to be impressed by Makai Mitchell. Big man, runs the floor, defends incredibly well in the post. He's a good defender in transition.
Phil, do you think Jordan Walsh might? Because I know it's guard beside his name, but could you see him moving up to the front court? Being and Bob, do you think too? Do you see him maybe taking that role of being a 4? And I know he's kind of he's a combo guard, but could you see him just kind of his shot from the outside is not very defined. It's not defined yet, so it's like I could see him being a big and taking some of those minutes.
Yeah, Jordan's obviously a really talented guy. And one of the things he's done, I've really been impressed by his defense, his on-ball defense. I think he's a really strong defender. And, of course, that's important to Eric. It should be important to all coaches. But Arkansas, I think, plays that really good man-to-man defense. And he's a guy that has a lot of athletic ability, going to a hole strong. He's hit some threes. And, like I said, maybe just wasn't his night the other night. Obviously, I think coaching staffs get feelings about kids or maybe they just, like I say, they decide to ride with some more experienced players in there like Devo. But Jordan, he's McDonald's All-American. He's
a stud. He's just Bobby's a freshman. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah, and I think sometimes people get spoiled looking at Nick Smith and Anthony Black. Those are two of the best freshmen in the country, and so is Jordan, certainly from a talent standpoint. But everybody can't be Nick Smith and Anthony Black. If you look around the country, but. And Jordan Walsh is a guy they probably really need to get going because he is a talented guy and he's got good size there at 6'7". And I think he has. I'm not saying he's as versatile as Trevon was, but I think.
But he runs the floor just as good. Yeah, he's not 6'11", but when he as far as being an athlete, man, he's just as athletic as anybody on that team.
Yeah, and I think he's a guy that can continue to grow and keep benefiting from these practices. I think these young guys. a week of practice means a lot to them because it's not like they're 20 or 21, they're 18 or 19 or whatever. Nick Smith was 18 in April. I looked it up the other day because he talked about how last time he was scoreless in a game, he thought he was 8 years old. And so, but Jordan's a guy that's loaded with talent. And again, I think he's going to get some more minutes, and maybe Eric gives him a bigger opportunity because you obviously don't have Trevon now. And, it'll be interesting to see who kind of plays that sixth-man role. But I don't think it's going to be one player. I think it's going to be multiple players just because, one, they have the depth. Eric's talked about this. This is probably the deepest team he's had. One, they have the depth, and Trevon was just such a unique player that I don't think you don't say, well, this guy's the next guy up. I think you say, well, these guys, depending on what we need this particular game, could provide what we would look for from Trevon.
Matt, there's a word you threw in there that I think goes a little bit into what Bob is saying about. Let's not forget Jordan Walsh is a 5-star McDonald's All-American, but he's not refined. He's athletic.
He's raw.
There are a lot of skills there, but he's raw. But that then translates over to looking at Anthony Black and Nick Smith Jr. I watch Nick Smith Jr. on the offensive end, and I know he can D up well. But refined on the offensive end?
We know who
My gosh, as an 18-year-old, he looks like he's ready for the league, at least. I mean, I'm no scout, but that's what it looks like.
Offensively, he is. He's a little lost on the defensive side of the ball. That's just going to come with reps. And when you're that good, a lot of times, Coach, I bet you in high school, how many times do you think he was guarding the best offensive player? He probably got to play a lot of help defense and do a lot of steals and that. But, yeah, Bob, don't you think Nick Smith is clearly the top dog on this team.
Oh, yeah, and that's why, you see him listed not just as a first-round draft pick, but like a top-5 draft pick. And, one thing, I remember watching the Maui games, and, of course, Nick Smith was still out, and Anthony Black really took over in some of those games, thinking, man, I'm sure Nick Smith is really good, but is he better than Anthony Black? And, of course, they're different kinds of players. Nick is just an elite scorer, and he's a good passer, too. I mean, he had five assists, I think, against Troy. He's not a selfish for all of his offensive skills. I don't think he's a selfish player, but he also understands, his skill set when he needs to take a game over, and he did that the other night. Eric talked about how, if Nick doesn't score 22 points, they probably win that game. He scored literally a third of their points. 20. Even I know 22 times 3 is 66. They scored 65. So he had a great offensive game, and he's a guy that can get to the free throw line and knock his free throws down, so even if he's not super hot, I think he had 6 of 14, so that's good, but, I'm sure he can do better. And you see he's a very emotional player out there, and he's really into it, and I'm sure making up for lost time with those games he had to miss. But, yeah, he's just an elite player, and I think Jordan Walsh is really talented, too, but like you guys said, he's a little bit raw, but I think, with every practice, he's getting less and less raw. And, I think he's a guy that they're going to need. I think he was going to have a good season anyway. But I think he's one of those guys that need to step up now. It was interesting. He came in for Trevon, I believe, when Trevon went down, but then he didn't play many of the minutes. Like I say, most of those went to Devo. But I think that may just because in the moment of the game, Eric and the staff felt comfortable with an older guy who obviously doesn't have the size of Jordan, but has a lot of experience. And they just felt, I think they felt more comfortable with Devo doing that in the moment of that game. But now with some more practices, things might change some. I don't necessarily expect Devo to play a ton of 4 against OU.
Bob, I got to check on something with you as far as football is concerned, because I read in the Democrat this morning, Tom Murphy's got a piece about Ricky Stromberg winning the Jacobs Blocking Trophy, which is given annually, according to his article, to the conference's most outstanding blocker. I don't remember the name of every single award in college football because there's more awards than there are bowl games, is what it feels like. But I'd never heard of the Jacobs Blocking Trophy. Have you?
Oh yeah. I remember when Sean Andrews won that back when he was helping block for Matt, I think. But yeah I'm not sure how many years that's been around, but. Yeah, that's an SEC trophy. Pretty prestigious because we know, it's a line of scrimmage league, right? And there's a lot of great, offensive linemen, a lot of, who have to block all those great defensive linemen. I was aware of the Jacobs Award. I think that's a great honor for Ricky because we know how elite the linemen are in the SEC.
That's pretty impressive then. It would have been impressive even if I had heard of that trophy or not. Reports of maybe Dowell Loggins being connected to South Carolina. And you knew he wasn't coming into college just to be a position coach, because he's a guy that was an OC in the NFL for however long he was.
Or
he
bounced. He was quarterback coach, OC, but 3 or 4 different times. Yeah.
You knew this was going to happen. I just kind of expected that he might be the Arkansas offensive coordinator once Kendall Briles moves on. I know Briles' name was connected to that job, too. I don't know if that means he was ever a candidate, but I think Dowell will do well as an offensive coordinator at South Carolina, or honestly anywhere in college football.
Yeah, I think Arkansas was, if Dowell is leaving, I think Arkansas was fortunate to have him for 2 years as a position coach, and I'm sure he helped influence the offense. And honestly, all due respect to tight end coaches everywhere, Dowell was probably overqualified for that job. You know, a long time NFL offensive coordinator, and early in his career, he was mentioned as a possible head coach, and that could still happen. He's still a relatively young guy. I remember talking to him a long time ago when he was just starting off. I think he just got the Titans OC job, and he talked about how his goal was ultimately to be the Arkansas head coach. You know, he loves Arkansas, and that's, I think, why he came back here as a tight ends coach. But yeah, if Dowell, if he is going to be the OC at South Carolina, I'm happy for him. I'm sure that's more money, and that's a move back up. And if he does well there, that's a ticket maybe back in the NFL or maybe to a head coaching job in college. You know.
Yeah, to your point, he married a cheerleader, and the other thing that was up there, the other thing, Bob, when you talk about Dow is how good he is at recruiting. Yeah, he might be overqualified to be the tight ends position coach, but he's an OC in Hardy's a ball guy that likes it. But the other thing that I really think we're going to miss him on is just when you have a former player that played for the university and then he comes back up there, kind of like you see with Cadillac and Auburn, there's just a different feel and a different excitement and a different way they relate to these players. So I think it'll hurt more in recruiting than anything. Yeah,
no doubt. And, it'll be interesting to see if they hold on to all those commitments. But, Dowell brought in, 4 tight ends or something like that. He's an elite recruiter. He's got a great personality. Hey, man, he was a holder, and he married a cheerleader. I always kidded him about that tells you a guy's a great recruiter.
Yeah, he is.
But Dowell, I loved covering Dowell, such a good guy. And he basically came to he probably could have played, D2 ball or 1AA, as I call it. But he came to Arkansas knowing he wasn't going to get to play quarterback. I think he got to play a few snaps and some blowouts, but he was the holder. And I remember he's told me he basically came to Arkansas because he wanted to be a coach, and so he wanted to be in an SEC program to learn about coaching. And I know, talking to Houston Nutt, he talked about how sharp Dowell was and how he could, get up there and diagram plays like a coach. And he was just kind of a coach way. He was such a sharp guy to have done so well in the NFL. I know Jerry Jones, I think, helped him get going with the Cowboys, and he was kind of in an analyst job, but he worked with a great staff there, like Sean Payton was there at the time, and some other guys who went on to be NFL head coaches.
He worked with Jeff Fisher there in Tennessee, and then John Fox as well. Yeah, his lineage is really good.
Yeah, and he's a go-getter. I mean, when he was doing all kinds of stuff. Those analysts worked their tails off, but he was doing extra stuff, and I think that helped him move up, and everybody could see what a sharp guy was and what a good future he had. And he's proof you don't have to have been a great player to be a great coach. And he talked about how NFL players, if you have the knowledge to help them get better, that's what they care about. And Matt obviously could speak to that, but an NFL player. But yeah, if they lose Dowell, that's a big loss. But you have to be happy for Dowell if he's getting back in a coordinator position.
This video is powered by the pros at Pascal Air Plumbing and Electric. Arkansas owned, Arkansas operated. GoPascal.com.